second wave feminism, were masters at exploiting the use of the media, particularly television in the early. Phil Donahue was a facilitator of all of this, and so Hugh Hefner. Elaborate.
Yeah, so this was one of the interesting things to look into, was just the role that both advertising played, but also, television was new, and you had someone like Gloria Steinem, who's incredibly attractive, and people just wanted to have her on their shows. She was articulate. She had this new magazine called Ms. And so it's amazing to see how they used magazines and women's magazines, which have obviously predated any of, the second wave feminism, but all of those sort of turned into avenues for reaching women with their narrative. And I think it's really incredible. In fact, there's all these crazy stories about Betty Friedan actually just being a complete tyrant. There was one show that she told the producer that if they didn't give her way about something, she was going to say this bad word 11 times live on air if they didn't give her what she wanted. I just did Dennis Prager's show, and he said that when he was 28 years old, he did a debate with her. And at one point, she got so upset with him, she called him a male chauvinist piglet, and she walked off. Yeah, he said, I don't know why I got called a piglet, probably because he was 28, but she walked off the stage, and, I was like, what did you do next? I just assumed the debate was over. He said, I just kept talking. And she eventually came back and finished the debate. But, it was kind of the first time that I had heard someone actually not let her tantrum win. He figured out the way, just keep talking and moving forward and ignore the tantrum. And she came back, and, they finished the debate, and, what I would give to see that debate now. But, it was those kinds of things that, again, these mean girl tactics to get their way. And, all the while, of course, using makeup and savvy clothing and, all these different ways of things that women are drawn into to make it look appealing. And, part of it, too, was just even hiding, Betty Friedan was kind of a holdout on the, and allowing lesbians and gays into the movement, and trans, all of this stuff was not trans. Obviously, it wasn't an issue then, but per se the way it is now. But she very much was focused on heterosexual women, and some of that probably had to do with her Marxist training and just trying to be normal and look like you fit in. I mean, that was really the effort of the communists of her era. But she eventually, caved on that. I think it was just the pressure of it got too big. She was at a national convention. I think it was the one in Houston for women, and eventually came out in support of it because of all these antics that were used by the women to sort of undermine anybody that was just focused on heterosexuals. So that was another piece of it that was used a lot. I think it was letting out rats at a wedding dress shop, and the bra burning you hear about in Atlantic City, these different ways in which they were masterful to use the media with strong visuals to make their cases as well.
You use the word masterful a few times here. The queen bees, as you call them, were masters at rhetoric, masters at using language to obscure the devastating realities of feminism.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. It just all was really smoke and mirrors. And, you don't see the real devastation until, you're with a woman who's 60, 70 years old. I had one woman I met in California recently, and she said, this was my life. This is how I lived my life. And, just the deep regret that she had now that she has no husband, no children, her parents are dead, just this kind of deep isolation. And, we know where that isolation comes from. It's really the effort. When we're isolated, we are weak. And, that's really the whole idea of it, is to isolate.
Is feminism, if you were to sum it up, is it the preaching of discontent to women? I mean, is that the essence of it?
I think so. I think that's a really good articulation, because from that comes the resentment towards men, also the sense of entitlement that women have, where we think we can do whatever we want, that we're entitled to have it all. That was a really big focus of the feminist movement in the earlier years of the 1970, was this myth that we could have it all. Well, we can have it all, but probably not all at once. And do you really want it all? There's a lot of pieces in life to juggle, and that's the beauty, I think, of a woman's life, is just all of these different seasons. It's always changing, especially when you have children and they're growing, and I think that kind of discontent has really undermined us in many ways, because it does make us always wanting more. And it's been highly effective.
Feminism's main achievement may well have been to obscure the meaning of womanhood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the child has to, a woman is a mother. She's meant to protect, to nurture, to shelter others, either biologically, spiritually, or psychologically. And if a woman is told that her life is all about her, then she cannot mother others in all of these capacities that she's made to mother others. The child becomes the enemy, and we're fundamentally changed into narcissists. I think that's right.
The third section of your book, where you talk about no girls, chapter 9, Margaret and Ls and Ls.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah, Margaret and the Ls. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you made the point that part of the genius of the women's movement was equating women's rights with those of blacks and gays. Mm-hmm. So the conflation of the categories became a major victory.
Yeah. Yeah, because then now you hear all kinds of language about sex blindness and whatnot, not recognizing that there are incredible distinctions and differences between men and women, and trying to erase those entirely through birth control, through abortion, through this idealization of the masculine, that I think has contributed significantly to the issues.
John Money, no discussion on this topic would be complete without discussing what he did in inventing the term gender identity.
Yeah. Yeah. So John Money was this scientist that thought that you could actually be born with the wrong gender. You could be born, like we hear all the time today, I was a man trapped in a woman's body, or, vice versa, or whatever. So he's doing all of this work. He ends up with these twin boys who are, one of whom there was an accident in his circumcision. And I think part of his penis was removed entirely. So he just thought, well, why don't we just test out my theory and make him a girl? And so that's what his parents did. They went along with it. And, in the meantime, he's also sexually molesting these boys as they're being raised, because, of course, he has access to them through his practice. And anyway, tragically, the boy that was called the girl ended up being told the truth and went back to being a man. Both men, when they were older, committed suicide because of just the abuse that they had undergone was so significant. It was obviously crushing to them. But the craziest part is that his ideas stuck. I mean, people are still using them. This is where all of the transgender, all of the trans, change in gender, all of it comes from Money's work, which has been largely discredited, but people have just hung on to it and, taken it on as if this is the gospel. This is Money's influence is really amazing and tragic, and just unbelievable that this kind of an awful therapist that had no right doing any kind of psychoanalysis on anyone was so influential on not just those boys' lives, but all of us.
Yeah, and I think Margaret Sanger fits into the same category. I mean, the enormous disservice that she has done to Western civilization, to human civilization, through birth control, through eugenic control, through population control. She was a purveyor of the population bomb myth and many other myths as well. But she was a master at that, and she wreaked havoc. Yeah. You can even look at the science of being well born, and its influence in Nazi Germany and the concentration camps and the eradication of Jews.
Yeah, no, it's incredible, the eugenics movement that came out of her work, and there was no hiding. I mean, it wasn't like she was hiding this aspect of it. I mean, even Planned Parenthood comes directly from her work. So it's amazing she's another one exactly that has just destroyed so much, created this wasteland, and people have this sense that her work was, such a wonderful boon to civilization.
Yeah, I call her the birth mother of Planned Parenthood. You make the remarkable counterintuitive statement that birth control is the key to understanding how homosexuality went from being unacceptable to being actively embraced by American culture. I find that counterintuitive, but there's a good way of contextualizing that.
Yeah, back in the 80s, there was this law professor whom I've heard about. I know his family, and he was a professor at Notre Dame Law, and he used to say, birth control is going to lead to gay marriage. And his students thought he was nuts. Like, you're crazy. That doesn't make any kind of sense. But he was right. And the reason he was right and why he could see this back in this, 70s and 80s when nobody else could see it is, again, what I mentioned earlier, this idea that if heterosexual sex no longer is connected with fertility, then how is it any different from homosexual sex? It's all becomes reduced to pleasure, potentially to bonding, but it's certainly not connected with children and actual family building. So if you've got enough couples who are contracepting and are taking on that attitude that their relationship is merely for sexual pleasure, it doesn't take too many steps to start seeing that heterosexual sex and homosexual sex are really the same thing. They're just about self-gratification. And that's really what has happened across the board. You just hear people so lackadaisical about it, not really seeing that there are much more significant realities at play and at work than just that sex is about gratification, but that the fertility piece is really vital for understanding the family and for building up a civilization.
Yeah, I mean, you're just a master writer. You talk about the word crisis that threatens to undo Western civilization. Some elaboration on words or phrases like birthing person, bleeding person, chest feeder, egg-making person. The insanity of that, but it somehow or other has become acceptable. Even in the definitions that you find in major dictionaries.
Yeah. And those are always changing. I mean, it was kind of the hard part about the book, was trying to keep up with the different changes that were happening in dictionaries. And, how do we, they're always trying to navigate the trans issue and not offend anyone. And so again, how do you come up with what a woman is? And, one of my favorites is something like a woman is a non-male, which of course could be anything, but, yeah, it's really remarkable to see just how deeply this has gone and how offensive it is. It's just stripping us of real content of what it means to be human and making us very much into, just sexual actors that are just seeking pleasure and gratification instead of something obviously much deeper that we all yearn for. And, even if we don't know that we do, it's there, that deep desire to be loved and to love others. All of that gets lost in this because it has been reduced to gratification. Even the latest word was thrown out was bonus hole. It's just incredibly it's just awful kind of reality of speaking about our bodies and what they're meant for.
Unbelievable. This comes right from your book. Cambridge Dictionary released a new definition of womanhood in 2022, including those who identify as trans women. And it reads as follows. An adult, so this is a new definition of womanhood. An adult who lives and identifies as female, though they may have been said to have a different sex at birth. That's from Cambridge. Merriam-Webster. Having a gender identity that is opposite of male.
Yeah, that was the one. And all rooted in gender identity. So it's nothing biological anymore. It's all a matter of just feelings and emotions and sentiments. And it's always interesting too to see sort of how much is embraced about when people change to something that they're not. But what about, you see this in among the psychology of homosexuality as well. What about when people want to go back to what they originally were? The detransitioners, but also people that want to go back to being heterosexual. That isn't completely looked down upon as well. So these are all the slip showing of really realizing this is an absolute ideology that they are pushing, because it's only one direction, and that's accepted, on a national scale, and that's to the deformation of what they are.
Talk about the effect of taking testosterone injections if you're a woman transitioning into a man. The description is horrifying.
Yeah, no, it's pretty incredible what happens. I mean, first things are things like weight loss, and then the vocal cords being tightened, and the voice getting deeper, getting hairier. But the one that's just really awful is the uterus. It dries up eventually, because it doesn't have estrogen and progesterone that obviously is needed in a woman's body to maintain a healthy uterus. So a lot of women under using testosterone have to have their uterus removed because it just dries out. So yeah, there's a lot of incredible long-term effects that happen. I know there was one woman I was reading about that she was on testosterone, and she had no idea that she had a beautiful voice. Well, her voice changed dramatically, and she can't sing anymore. So it's those kinds of things that are major changes that, most of which are, you're not going back the other direction, especially once you've been on testosterone for longer periods of time.
Even male balding pattern.
Yes, exactly. All of that. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You really want to be a man?
I know. Well, I think that's a great question, though. I mean, that's the thing is we haven't said anything good about being a woman for 50 years. So, of course they want to be a man. Of course they don't want to deal with a period and all of those things connected with our fertility, breasts, all of that is very awkward and uncomfortable and many respects hard to adjust to. And this is what these girls want, is they don't really want to be boys. They don't really want to be men. They just want to be a non-woman. And, I think that's the attraction is that aspect, not really to be a man.